Unit 2, Lesson 3, Pragmatic and Popular Approaches. Welcome to Conflict Resolution and Peacemaking, the class that teaches you how to manage interpersonal conflict and drama for yourself and others. I'm your instructor, David Lowry. Being a peacemaker isn't always easy. Like everyone else, we have moments when we become triggered. We are not going to be perfect. But when we fail, let's be brave enough to reflect on what our contribution was to a conflict. Our contribution may be small, but we are 100% responsible for our small part. If we need to humble ourselves to make things right, I'm hoping we'll have the courage to do so. In our last lesson, we introduced the concept of conflict styles and presented the scholarly work of Rahim and Thomas and Kilman. Their works help us to see how most people approach conflict and allow us to reflect on our default styles as well. Each of the conflict styles has benefits and rewards. When you understand conflict styles, you can broaden your view on how you might approach a conflict more successfully. Today, we're going to include some non-empirical based approaches to our discussion of conflict styles. Though these might lack the scientific rigor we appreciate from scholars like Rahim, they are impressive nonetheless because they pass what we call the aha test. In other words, many people have tried these approaches and found them to be of great value. We are especially impressed with two organizations known as Relational Wisdom 360 and David Emerald's The Power of TED. An organization known as Relational 360 has trained thousands of laypersons to mediate conflicts. Ken Sande started the organization that was once known as the Peacemakers. Though trained as a professional engineer and lawyer, Ken Sande became very interested in applying Christian religious principles along with his legal knowledge to problems facing churches, religious organizations, and interpersonal relationships. His book, The Peacemaker, first published in 1991, met with great success. It's been revised several times and has been translated into 15 foreign languages. Ken Sande is still active in dispute resolution and is a member of the Alternative Dispute Resolution Committee of the Montana Bar Association. Of interest to our discussion on conflict styles, peacemakers note three broad approaches one may use to resolve conflicts. These include escape responses, attack responses, and peacemaking responses. Ken Sande calls this the slippery slope of conflict, where individuals always slide from one side to the other. He believes that unless we've been trained, most of us will naturally gravitate towards either an avoiding or an attacking style. Though we may wish to remain above the fray, most people gravitate towards an escape or attack response. On one side of the slippery slope are escape responses. Many people, when faced with interpersonal difficulties, resort to dysfunctional approaches such as denying the problem exists, physically running away from the situation, or even the extremes of resorting to suicide. Interestingly, suicide not only includes physical harm to oneself, but manifests in psychological dysfunctions where one checks out emotionally, physically withdraws, and gives up all hope for future happiness. For instance, some abused people stay in dysfunctional relationships because they have given up hope of solving their problems for a better life. Ken Sande calls the avoidance technique peace faking. The other side of the slippery slope includes the attack responses of physical assault, litigation, and murder. As with suicide, one does not have to actually commit murder to destroy someone. It can be done by murdering their reputation or speaking ill of someone or doing all one can to ruin the personal success of another. Ken Sande labels these approaches as peace breaking. At the top of the slippery slope are the peacemaking responses. These include various options that have proven value in solving problems and creating space for peace. These include overlooking, reconciliation, negotiation, mediation, arbitration, and accountability. We will talk about these more as the course progresses. The Relational 360 organization believes that with training, ordinary people may learn how to practice all 6 of the peacemaking responses effectively. In Relational 360, the goal is for the peacemaker to assume a middle position where one neither attacks or runs away from conflict. The middle ground often requires courage because we must learn to overcome our instinctual desires to fight or run away. However, with practice, one learns how to assume this middle ground by utilizing one of the 6 peacemaking roles. Now let's talk about the power of TED. Our last pragmatic approach examines the work of David Emerald as outlined in his book, The Power of TED. TED stands for the Empowerment Dynamic, and it's based upon the work of Stephen Karpman and his dreaded drama triangle. It follows a conceptual framework related to transactional analysis developed by a friend and noted psychologist Eric Berne. Emerald's DDT describes 3 standard default approaches that people rely on as they face interpersonal difficulties. The 3 points of the drama triangle include a persecutor, a rescuer, and a victim. The persecutor approaches conflict using anger, blaming, shaming, and judgment techniques. The persecutor often resorts to criticism, belittlement, and personal put-downs of others when they become upset. Emerald's antidote for this behavior requires that persecutors learn to recognize their tendencies to behave this way and to adopt the role of a challenger instead. The challenger holds people accountable but encourages them to improve and learn new approaches. Enablers are people who like to do things for other people. Enablers may seem like kind people, but they usually assume that victims don't have enough skill, mental abilities, or willpower to do what's required of them, so they just take over. This compounds problems since a person can't learn how to improve if someone constantly does their work for them. Emerald's antidote for this behavior is to adopt the role of a coach. Coaches help people solve their problems instead of doing the work for them. They become a problem-solving teacher instead. This is a good time to introduce the I do, we do, and you do method. Rather than becoming a rescuer who does the work, others need to learn for themselves. Here's a practical approach for helping people. It's called the I do, we do, you do principle. For example, suppose you want to teach your child how to clean a bathroom. In many ways, it would be much easier and faster for the parent to do the job themselves. But this isn't beneficial for the child over the long term, especially once they're on their own. First, the parent brings the child into the bathroom and demonstrates how to clean the bathroom. Next, both do the job together. Finally, the child cleans the bathroom by themselves, with parents giving feedback as needed. The I do, we do, you do method is an effective way to help people learn how to take care of their problems. The last role we will discuss on the dreaded drama triangle is that of the victim. Victims believe themselves incapable of solving their problems and constantly seek help from others. The victim doesn't take responsibility for their actions, and they blame everyone and everything for their problems. Victims remain in their chaos until an enabler comes along or they manage to change their attitudes. The antidote for victimhood is to accept the role of a creator. Creative people look for new and unusual approaches to solve their problems. Instead of allowing themselves to be overwhelmed by difficulties, they find satisfaction in uncovering unique ways of moving forward. Okay, so let's quickly review what we've discussed in today's podcast. We've talked about 2 pragmatic approaches for resolving conflict. They were Ken Sande's slippery slope of conflict and David Emerald's empowerment dynamic. These descriptive approaches help individuals understand what they are doing and how it contributes to conflict. Both approaches are easy to learn and encourage people to abandon dysfunctional roles in favor of roles that better contribute to peacemaking. In our next podcast, we will borrow from the things we have learned thus far in this unit and offer some peacemaking principles. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. We encourage you to download a copy of today's script to help you complete a short quiz over today's discussion.